Hello, so today we will continue with our discussion of heat. So until our last class, we studied about these three different kinds of temperature scales. And what were those three different types of temperature scales? One of those was the Celsius, one of those was Fahrenheit, and then there was the other one, that's Kelvin. And I also discussed that what was the representation of these three different temperature scales. For Celsius we write it as degree C, for Fahrenheit it's degree F, and for Kelvin it's simply K. We do not use the degree sign. But among these three units, though we in India use the Celsius most commonly, and you will find in the certain foreign countries Fahrenheit is used a lot, it is Kelvin which is the SI unit of temperature. So when it comes to physics, it is Kelvin which we should be concerned about, which is our SI unit. Okay, now it is important to know that how these three different temperature scales are related to one another and what are their lower and the upper fixed points. So each of these has got their lower fixed point LFP and the upper fixed point UFP. The lower fixed point on the Celsius scale is 0 degrees Celsius and upper one is 100 degrees Celsius. For the Fahrenheit, it is 32 degree Fahrenheit and 212 degree Fahrenheit is the upper fixed point. And for Kelvin, it is 273 Kelvin and the upper one is the 373 Kelvin. Now how are these lower and the upper fixed points fixed? Well, by convention, the lower fixed point is that point, or it is that temperature at which ice melts to form water. So we define lower fixed point as the temperature at which ice melts to form water, and we define upper fixed point as the temperature at which water vaporizes to form the gaseous state of water, that is steam. So when we measure this temperature at which ice melts to form water, on the Celsius scale the temperature is 0 degree, and similarly in the Fahrenheit scale it is 32 degree Fahrenheit, and as you can understand in the Kelvin scale it is 273 Kelvin. And similarly the temperature at which water vaporizes to form steam, in the Celsius scale it is 100 degrees Celsius, in the Fahrenheit scale it is 212 degree Fahrenheit, and in the Kelvin scale it is 373 Kelvin. This is how the lower and the upper fixed points are described. Now what are the relationships between these different temperature scales? The first thing that we can see is that in the Celsius scale we have got this 100 divisions, and in the Kelvin scale also we have 100 divisions. But in the Fahrenheit scale we have 180 divisions. So when we find out a relation between Celsius and Kelvin, it is easy. 100 divisions in the Celsius scale is equivalent to 100 divisions in the Kelvin scale. So that basically means that 1 degree Celsius change is same as 1 Kelvin change. But when we find out a relation between degree Celsius and degree Fahrenheit, we see that 100 divisions here in the degree Celsius scale is equivalent to 180 divisions in the degree Fahrenheit scale. So now you can do this simple calculation that 100 corresponds to 180. So if I cancel the zeros, that implies that for 1 degree Celsius change we have 1.8 degree Fahrenheit change. Now we have a direct formula by which if we are given a temperature in Celsius scale, we can find one in the Fahrenheit scale, and we will now look into that formula. And what is that formula? The formula is C by 5 is equal to F minus 32 by 9. So if you are given the value in F, you can find out what is its equivalent value in C, and if you are given the value in C, you can find out what is its equivalent value in F. So this formula, this C by F equals F minus 32 by 9, is a formula by which we can interrelate between Celsius and the Fahrenheit scale. And how do we interrelate between the Celsius and the Kelvin scale? Well, since we saw that 0 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature at which ice melts, corresponds to 273 Kelvin, so from there we can thus write that in order to find out the temperature of Kelvin, we will have to add 273 to the temperature which we measured in degrees Celsius. So that's about the formulas, but I am sure that unless you see an example, the thing won't exactly be clear. So here, let me give an example. Suppose I am given the temperature of a room is 20 degrees Celsius. Someone tells me, find out what will be its temperature in Kelvin and what will be the temperature of the room in Fahrenheit. So what I do? So for Kelvin, I use this formula. So I write K equal to 273 plus the temperature in Celsius, so that is 273 plus 20, so that is equal to 293 Kelvin. This is the temperature in Kelvin. And for Fahrenheit, we will use the formula that F minus 32 by 9 is equal to C by 5. So if I now try to make F to be the subject step by step, we get this, and then finally F becomes 9 into C by 5 plus 32. So for C, we put the value 20 and then we do the further calculation. Here we get cancellation by 4, so we have 36 plus 32, that makes it 36 plus 32 implies that the value comes out to be 66 plus 2, 68 degree Fahrenheit. This is how we can convert from one temperature scale to another, and I hope that it is comparatively clear now that what are the different temperature scales and how we measure it. Alright. Let us now look into the next area, and this next area is the area of thermal expansion. So what is thermal expansion? So when we supply heat to any substance, we see that generally their volumes increase. So this expansion which takes place in matter because of the absorption of heat energy, that is thermal expansion. So suppose I have some structure here, and to this structure I provide some amount of heat. I give some amount of heat, and then I find that the volume of the substance increases. What do I find? I find that volume of the substance increases. So this volume that increases because of the absorption of this heat energy that we provide, that process is known as thermal expansion. But what is the molecular reason behind thermal expansion? So if I have, say for example, some arrangement of atoms and molecules, say these are certain arrangements of the atoms and molecules. So when we provide heat energy to this system, what happens is the molecules, they start moving even faster. Their speed increases. So initially what will happen is that the molecules will start vibrating. And when we provide even more energy to it, the molecules will vibrate even more rapidly. And as and when we keep on increasing the heat energy, there will come a stage when the distance between these two molecules will also increase. This distance will also increase. I think you know this, that between the three states of matter, what are the three states? The three states of matter are solids, liquids and gases. Now between the three states of matter, solids have got the smallest interatomic distance, that is d is smallest in solids. In liquids and in gases, the d is the largest, the intermolecular distance, and in liquids d is medium, that is it is intermediate between solids and gases. And between solids, liquids and gases, which one expands the most? Gases. Gases expand the most when we heat them, and solids expand the least. And liquids, as we said, it's medium, so the expansion that liquids undergo is intermediate. In order to show that yes, it actually solids do undergo this kind of expansions that we are talking of, we will now look into an experiment which is really a very good experiment and actually proves this point. So this experiment is the Grevson's ring and ball experiment. So what is the Grevson's ring and ball experiment? It's a very basic experiment. Well, there is nothing to not understand in the experiment, so I will just draw a setup first, which will make the thing even more clear. So let me just draw it. So the experiment is something like this, that you have got a stand here. From the upper part of the stand, using a thread, some kind of ball is extended. The ball is suspended. What is the ball made up of? The ball is made up of iron. So the iron ball here is held to a clamp burner, and it is being held by a string. So first of all, we take the iron ball and we suspend it freely, and we find out that this hole that is here in the clamp, the iron ball easily passes through that. It passes through the ring. What we do now is, we now take out the iron ball back from the hole and we heat it. We heat it using a Bunsen burner, and after that we suspend the ball back here again. And now when we try to pass the ball through the ring, we see that the ball gets stuck. So why does it happen? It's because now the ball has expanded. Its volume has increased. So previously it was just fitting the size of this ring, it was just fitting the size of this hole, so it could pass. But now, because its volume has increased, it can no longer pass through the ring. So this clearly demonstrates that yes, upon heating, substances do undergo thermal expansion. So this is what happens before heating, and this is what happens after heating. So this is a very conclusive experiment, the Greve-Sand's ring and ball experiment, and it is also a famous experiment. Let us now look into certain practical applications of this. Certain practical applications of the thermal expansion of solids. If you have ever observed, if you look at railroads, you will find that between tracks like this, very small gaps are kept. So these are the wooden sleepers in below the tracks, and these are my rail tracks. So if you observe closely, you will find that very thin gaps are intentionally kept in between the rail tracks. So what's the reason? The reason is during summer, when the overall temperature due to the weather increases, what happens is the material with which the rail tracks are made, those undergo thermal expansion, and these thin gaps which are kept are made to compensate for that, because after they expand, they hold against each other very tightly. If we do not keep this gap in between the rails, then what will happen is, if it is already like connected tightly with each other, during summer when it will further expand, what happens is that the rails will get bent, because it will not get any space to expand, and that can lead to accidents in the form of derailment of trains. Similarly, you will find out that telephone and electric wires, they kept sagging in between the poles in order to prevent them from snapping during winter. So if you have like this two kind of poles, so this is the road and these are the two poles, then the wires, this is how they are attached. This is the correct way. We will never find it is attached exactly like this. No. The reason is they're attached like this because during the winter what happens, when the temperature decreases, these wires contract, and when the wires contract, then they become like this, stout. So if they're already kept stout, during winter they will further contract, but since they're already stout, they will not be able to contract any further. So what will happen is that the wire will snap from between. Similarly, you will find out that iron girders which are used to make the bridge, they're fixed at one end and the other end rests on rollers. So there are like this two kind of pillars, and between the pillars on one side we have got rollers and the other end is fixed for the bridge. So what happens is during summer when the bridge expands, these rollers move and allow the bridge to expand. If both the ends are fixed, then when the bridge expands, what can happen is cracks can develop in various parts of the bridge. We shall now look into the changes in state of matter. What are the different changes in state? And I am sure you have some idea about this. Still, let us go through this. So these are the three common states: solid, liquid and gas. Now when we convert a substance from its solid to liquid state, what do? We provide heat to it, we add heat energy to it, and this process is known as melting. The process via which this happens is it's also known as fusion or melting. So what is fusion or melting? It is the process during which a solid, upon heating, changes to its liquid state at a particular temperature, and that particular temperature is the melting point. It is the melting point of the solid. And similarly, if we cool that liquid, that is, if we take away heat from the liquid, hence minus, that is, we are cooling. So if we cool the liquid, what is happen is that the liquid will change back to the solid state. And this process where this happens is known as freezing. It is also known as solidification. And the particular temperature at which this change of state happens from liquid to solid, that temperature is called the freezing point of the liquid. In a similar manner, when we heat a liquid in order to convert it to its gaseous state, we do that via a process which is known as vaporization or boiling, and this happens at a particular temperature which is known as the boiling point of the liquid. And when we do the reverse process, that is when we cool the gas back to its liquid form, we do it by extracting heat away from the gas, that is, we cool the gas. And this thing takes place at what is known as condensation point of the gas. Condensation point of the gas. The process where the substance in the vapor or gaseous state converts back to the liquid, that is called condensation. So if you review it once more, when we have a solid and we convert it to liquid, the temperature at which this happens is known as the melting point. This process is called fusion or melting, and for that we need to heat the solid. And when we are trying to convert the liquid back to solid, we need to cool the liquid. This process is known as freezing or solidification, and that particular temperature at which the liquid converts back to solid is called the freezing point of the liquid. Similarly, if we have a liquid which we want to convert to gas, what we do, we heat it. The process is known as the boiling or vaporization, and this takes place at the boiling point of the liquid. And when we have the gas and we want to get the liquid back, we cool it. We take away heat from the gas, and this process is called condensation, and it takes place at the condensation point of the gas. It is interesting and important as well for you to know that what are the different values of this melting point, freezing point and all, exceptionally for the case of water, especially for the case of water. So for water, the melting point of ice is equal to the freezing point of liquid water, and that is 0 degrees Celsius. And similarly, the boiling point of water is equal to the condensation point of vapor or steam, and that is 100 degrees Celsius. Just remember that these temperatures will be different for different substances. I just gave you the example of water. Finally, there are two more processes with which we should be familiar, and I am sure you already know it. One of them is sublimation, the other one is evaporation. And what is sublimation? Sublimation is the process where a substance in its solid state directly converts to the gaseous state without passing through the intermediate liquid state. That is sublimation. Substances that undergo sublimation include iodine, then you have naphthalene, dry ice. These are substances which undergo sublimation. And the opposite process, where the gas converts back to solid directly without passing through the liquid state, that process is called deposition. And what is evaporation? Evaporation is a process with which we all are familiar. Every day in our houses, if we do not do anything else, at least we do one thing, and that is we wash our clothes, and we keep those clothes out in the open to dry. And we find that after some time the clothes, they do get dry. No water or moisture is present in the clothes after some time. What is the reason behind that? The reason is the water which was present in the clothes. So if you have like some kind of clothes which you have kept out in the open air, and there are these water molecules, due to the heat of the sun, what happens is these water molecules, they convert to vapor. That is, they convert from liquid to gaseous state. But yes, this conversion from liquid state of water to vapor state of water, this is not taking place at 100 degrees Celsius. So water which is present in the clothes, that water is not undergoing the process of boiling. So when a liquid converts to its vapor state at temperatures below the boiling point, those process or that process is known as evaporation. It is exactly the reason which is responsible for the formation of clouds. You know that there are large water bodies of Earth on Earth. In fact, 70% of Earth is filled with water. And during the day when sun's heat falls on these water bodies, the water evaporates. And it forms this vapor. And those vapors, when it moves to the upper layers of the atmosphere, there the temperature is low. And so what happens is that this vapor, it further condenses back to water droplets. And many such water droplets combine together with each other to form what we know as clouds. And it is these clouds which are responsible for rainfall. And I am sure you know about how all of this leads to the water cycle on Earth. We shall continue from here on in our next class.